5, verses 14 and 15, and I'm reading from New King James Version. For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country, who called his own servants and delivered his goods to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability, and immediately he went on a journey. May the Lord bless the reading of His word.
Grab a stand real quick. Do we have a stand back here? Okay. Can someone grab that? Can you grab it? Thanks, Rick. Happy, well, it's been said already, so I'll say something different. Happy, your New Year's resolutions are probably already done with day. It's day 7, and I don't know about you. I didn't set any New Year's resolutions because I already figured I wouldn't keep them. So I don't know if that's being smart or just being a failure, but it's something. It's something for sure. Thanks, Greg. We're starting a new series, and it's the name of it is called. There are 5 specific verses in the Bible that talk about calling and speak specifically in our specific calls to something. There's 3 of them found in Romans chapter 1. There's one found in 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and one in Galatians 5. And today, I want to talk about one of those. We're going to go into a 5-part series. So this Sabbath is going to be about a verse we find in 1 Corinthians 1, verse 9. We're not going to actually be there, but I'm just going to read it really quick. And 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 9 says this: God is faithful, and God has called you into fellowship, into the fellowship of His Son, Christ Jesus. And I was curious. I looked up the word fellowship because it says that we're called into fellowship, into the fellowship of Jesus Christ. So I was like, it's not just like fellowship hanging out together. It's like it's something specific. And I was looking up the word, and the word really, I think the best way to put it is partnership. We're called into partnership with Jesus. And because we're called into partnership, that begs its own question. What is that? What do I do with that? What does that mean? And so today we're actually going to be in Matthew 25. I want to talk a little bit about that because I think there's a lot of blocks to our ability to partner with God, our idea of how to partner with God. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the parable of the 10 talents. Austin came up to me, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, Pastor Jesse, what are you speaking about today?" And when a child asks you, "What are you speaking about?" then you realize, I better know what I'm speaking about because I got to condense this really quick. And he asked me, and so hopefully I got this. Hopefully I won't tell him what I told you because it's a little more drawn out. Or I won't tell you what I told him. It's a little more drawn out. But let's pray and we'll get into this. Lord, I want to thank you so much for who you are. You are a God who has shown up not only in our lives but also visibly to people thousands of years ago. And the impact you made on them is still being felt today. And so, God, I pray that your Spirit would be in this place. My words would not be my words, but they would be your words, and that you would bless people's hearts and minds. That the connections that are made would be impactful. And so, we thank you for this, God. Help us to understand how we're called. In your name, amen. Calling. It's interesting. Calling. We wouldn't have even thought of this word maybe 120 years ago, realistically. But calling has now become one of the, I don't even know how to put it. It's what we do. Actually, not even really. Calling went from being the thing we did to now being the thing that we do only if we can't reach someone by text. Even though sometimes I'll sit there and I'll write out like a whole paragraph. I'm like, why did I just not call? This is dumb. But calling is something that its effect on our lives can radically change the way that we live. And the fact that we're called into partnership, into the fellowship of Jesus Christ, to partner with him, to move forward into this world is, I think, one of the biggest and one of the most cool things that he has done. And I'm going to go through this story here, and we'll see how God has called us into partnership, not into the truth and only the truth, but into partnership with him and moving forward. We're in Matthew 25, verses 14 and 15. And let me just read this again. Thank you, Roger, for reading that. Matthew 25, verses 14 and 15. For it will be like a man going on a journey. When he's talking about it, he's talking about the kingdom of heaven. For the kingdom of heaven will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. The context for this verse is that Jesus has been talking to his disciples and talking to people about kind of the end of the world. And he's talking about the kingdom of heaven and its coming. He uses the idea of a fig tree, that when the fig tree blossoms, you know what's coming, right? And so if you can see that, then you should be able to know that when the signs come, you're going to see it. Then he uses this parable of 10 virgins, 10 women who weren't married. And these ladies, they all go to this wedding, and at the wedding, they expect to get there, the bridegroom is going to come, and then the celebration is going to start. But they get there, nobody there. And 5 of them have a lot of oil in their lamps, the other 5 don't. And so they all fall asleep, and they wake up, they hear the bridegroom coming, and the 5 that don't have enough, they're like, hey, give us some of yours. And the other 5 are like, we have enough for us, we don't have enough for you. And so the others have to go and find it. But then we come to this parable. And Jesus says, for the kingdom of heaven will be like a man. And when he's talking about a man, he's talking about himself. Because he's about to die, and he's about to then go to heaven after he resurrects. So he's saying, it will be like a man going on a journey, who calls his servants to him and entrusted them with his property. And then he does something interesting. He says, in verse 15, to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, each according to his own ability. A talent is interesting. A talent was the equivalent of 20 years of a laborer's wage. 20 years. I looked up the median income of the U.S. right now, approximately. It's around $51,000 a year. So if we're taking that, going for 20 years, a little over $1 million. That's what a talent is. So to the first guy, he's giving $5 million. To the next guy, he's giving 2, and to the next guy, he's giving $1 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. And it's interesting because he gives it to them according to their ability. He doesn't give it to them all equally. And we would expect, God isn't he about equality? God is about fairness. That's something I will say differently. Each of us is built with different skills, different personalities, different abilities. God gives to us according to our abilities. He doesn't give it to us that's something that's going to overwhelm us. He doesn't give us something that's going to dramatically underuse what he's given us. But that's the thing is talents. Talents. He obviously trusted these guys. I mean, if he's giving them $5 to $1 million, he trusts them. I can't imagine giving that money, that amount of money to someone, let alone my money. I don't think I could give $5 million of someone else's money to someone else, let alone mine. and yet he's giving $8 million total away to these guys, entrusting it to them. The word talent actually, the way we use it today gets its usage from this parable. This is things that are given to us and that we're supposed to use. And that's really cool because I think that God has placed in each of us gifts, abilities, talents, and he's placed those in us. And some of them are really obvious, right? Sometimes we look around at people and we're like, they obviously are very talented. We look at performers or celebrities. Not all celebrities are celebrities because they're talented. They just happen to get there. So, but that's Kardashians. Anyways, sorry if I'm hating on your show. We can look at people and we can say they're obviously talented, but then there's others of us who are like, but I don't know what my talents are, Or maybe I'm talented, but I'm not as talented as that person, right? And people have said to me, actually, let me put it this way. I think sometimes we struggle to figure out what our talents are because we're actually denying very obvious strengths and abilities in our lives. How am I talented? That's a question that you hear a lot. But it's because we're denying obvious strengths in our lives. People have said to me, they're like, Jesse, you're talented because you speak and you play music. I'm like, okay, thanks. That's nice of you. But this person that was talking to me is like, there are people in this world who can literally make you feel right at home. That the minute you start talking to them, you feel like they accept you, they care about you. How do you do it? That's what I want to know. Because people will say that to me. They'll be like, oh, Jesse, you're talented. But I'm like, I struggle with making people feel comfortable. I struggle with talking to people I don't know. That's something that, I'm an introvert, okay? Like, let's just be real here. That's a struggle for me. And yet, people that have those incredible gifts, they'll just be like, oh, you know what, it's just my personality. It's just my personality. It's just something that I happen to have. It's just my personality. It's nothing. Let me just tell you this, and it's not just about this, but let me just tell this to every single person in this room. God would not have knit that piece of you into your very being if he meant it for nothing. God would not have knit that piece into you, into the very being of who you are, if he meant it for nothing. God doesn't put stuff in your life for nothing. God doesn't put stuff in your life for nothing. And I think that there's three kind of simple facts that tell me this. The fact that God created you the way that you are, the fact that he's gotten you through the things that he's gotten you through, and the fact that he is who he is means that your life has purpose. The fact that he created you the way that you are, the fact that he's gotten you through what he's gotten you through, and the fact that he is who he is means that your life is created with purpose. And I think that we still think, but I don't really have a lot. I just happen to be good with technology. I just happen to enjoy being with people. I just happen to have those things. So it's nothing. God can't really use them. Like how can I can't really do much with those things. But the thing that got me about the story is that the master wouldn't have entrusted them with the money if he didn't think they could do something with it. He wouldn't have given it to them unless he believed that they were capable of doing something with it. It's the same thing for us. Like, God would not have placed it in your life. God would not have given you the personality, the abilities, the talents, the gifts, everything, the resources that he's given you unless he believed that you were capable of doing something with it. And yet so many of us are sitting back like, I don't know what to do. But he wouldn't have given it to you if he didn't believe in you. What happens next is the master leaves. In verse 16, he who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But then we come to this last guy. Verse 18, but he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. And I've always wondered, why did this guy hide it? What made this guy hide it? Why is he digging in the ground and hiding it? Because while he's not losing it, he's not using it. Maybe I need to say that again. Maybe he isn't losing it, but he sure isn't using it. And I think that he gets into this position in his life because he's afraid. But the master gets back. In verse 19 it says, now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have 5 talents more. And then in verse 21, his master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. what happens next is the other guy does the same thing. The guy with the 2 talents, same exact thing happens. Literally same wording except for the fact that there's 2 talents instead of 5. I mean, same wording, same everything. But then we come to this last guy. In verse 24, we're in chapter 25 of Matthew, verse 24. He also would receive the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you didn't sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. Verse 25, and so I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, have what is yours. How many times in your life have you allowed your perception of your failure to shape your perception of other people? How many times in your life have you allowed your perception of your own failure to shape your perception of other people? Because that's what happens here. Like this guy, all of a sudden out of nowhere, is all of a sudden saying, wait, I knew you to be a hard man. And now all of a sudden his perception of his own failure is shaping his perception of his master. Same thing happens in our lives. I've seen parents who they didn't make it to where they wanted to make it. Their dreams didn't get fulfilled. And so now they've looked at their children and said, you need to aspire to the same level of greatness, or you need to aspire to the same dreams that I had. And now their child isn't going for those dreams. So now they look at their child as a failure, even though it was because they never reached their dreams in the first place that they're putting that pressure on their child, right? Same thing happens even at work, right? Am I doing everything I need to be doing? Am I working? I'm working hard enough. But now all of a sudden I got these insecurities. Am I working hard enough? Am I working as hard as that person? Well, but that person over there, they don't seem to be working as hard as I am. So therefore, my perception of them is changed because I'm afraid I have my own insecurities about how well I'm working. Same thing happens with God. My life is a mess. My life is an absolute mess. I can't control it. So if I can't control it, how could God ever control it? Now all of a sudden my perception of God is being shaped by my perception of my own failures. That's scary because God is not bound by my failures. God is not bound by what I am capable of. And so all of a sudden this is what happens to this guy. He is now allowed his perception of his own failures to shape his perception of his master. He goes, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you don't sow, and gathering where you don't scatter any seed. What he's saying here, he's saying, you want a result, but you never invested in me in the first place. We do that sometimes. Sometimes do you feel like God wants you to do something, but you feel like you don't have the ability to do it? And you're sitting there like, God, you want me to go, you want me to accomplish something, but you haven't invested in me to actually, you never gave me the ability to tell someone about Jesus. You never gave me the words. You never showed me how to care about people. Therefore, I can't do it. You're calling me to it, but I can't do it. But what we're forgetting is that the master had already invested in him. The master wouldn't have given this man $1 million unless he trusted that he was able to use it. But the man was letting his insecurity, his fear of failure, keep him from believing in the trust his master put in him. He was letting his fear of failure stop him before he ever got started. How many of us are allowing that to happen today? Our fear of failure is greater than our belief in the ability of God. I think the biggest thing is we have to take the step in believing that God sees something in me that I don't see. God sees something in me that I don't see. I think there's something, let me just put it this way. That the behavior we engage in tells us a lot about the person we believe in. Let me say that one more time. The behavior we engage in tells us a lot about the person we believe in. I think that if we engage in self-protective behavior, if I say I can't tell people about Jesus because I don't know how, I'm not a preacher, I'm not a pastor, I don't know what to say. I can't go after that job or that dream that I have been going after, that I've been pushed to, because I might fail on the way, right? I could never work with youth because I'm not cool enough, right? If I think that I'm not smart enough, that I'm not creative enough, I'm not good enough, if I engage in that kind of behavior, I'm saying I believe in a God that is incredibly small, a God that can't do anything in my life, whose promises don't have any application in my reality. But if I engage in faith-based behavior, when the storm comes, if I'm like, yes, this storm is greater than anything I've ever seen, but I believe in a God who controls the wind and the waves. If you're separated by a sea of doubt from where you are and where God is calling you to be, or where you are and where you know you need to be, then I believe in a God who can part that sea, right? If I engage in that faith-based behavior, if I start to believe that I'm empowered, that I've been chosen, that I have the power of the risen Christ literally living in me today, then I can start believing in a God who is big. I can start believing in a God who is capable, a God who can create beauty out of nothing, a God who can break the power of addiction even though it's strong. That's the God that I believe in, a God that can preach the gospel through me even though I don't even know how. Our behavior, the behavior we engage in, tells us a lot about the person we believe in. What the master does next, though, is really cool. He says, actually it wasn't even next, it's what the master said to the other two servants. He says to the other two guys, verse 21, his master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. $5 million. Being entrusted with $5 million was a little thing." If this God believes that entrusting you with $5 million is a little thing, church, do I need to keep going? He's got crazy stuff coming. He's got crazy stuff he can do through you. If he believes that $5 million and being entrusted with that is a small thing. And so many of us have been entrusted with even smaller things, but the fear of failure keeps us from going forward. But I think the big thing is the fact that we have to trust that he trusts us. We have to trust his trust in us. My wife, sometimes she'll just gotten up, right? And I'll look at her, I'm like, she's beautiful. I honestly believe that. She's beautiful. But when I tell her, honey, you look beautiful, ladies, what is her response? No, I don't have my makeup on. But then the same thing goes the opposite direction, though. Sometimes I'll be feeling discouraged or feeling like I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And she'll come and she'll say, honey, I believe in you. I think that you're on the right track here. And then I'm just like, but no, I just don't know. But the reality is that if I don't trust that what she's saying is what she really believes, then what she says has no meaning in my life. If she doesn't trust that what I'm saying is what I really believe about her, then what I say has no meaning in her life, has no bearing, it has no power in her life. If I don't believe what God says about me, then his word, his power has no ability to change my life. And that's the difference, is sometimes we go through life wondering, God, where are you? What are you going to do? And he's like, I already told you I loved you. I already told you that I've entrusted you with everything that I created you to be. What more do you need? You just have to trust that I trust you enough to put it in you. We have to trust his trust in us. It doesn't matter what we did that day in the past. It doesn't matter what we think we're capable of. We have to trust it because he's a God of grace. And the only thing keeping us from trusting what he says about us is us trusting what we say about ourselves. Because what I'm going to do in my life is I'm going to say, I'm not capable. I'm not strong enough. I don't have the ability. I don't see the path. I don't know what to do. That's what I'm going to say about myself. I'm going to say that, yesterday I didn't even care. So why would God do anything today? But we're trusting what we say about ourselves more than we're trusting what he says about us. And when we do that again, we allow ourselves to have more power than Jesus in our lives. And if you're doing that, you're missing out on everything. Seriously, if you have more power in your life than Jesus has in your life, not much is going to happen because you're limited. I'm limited, except I'm not, because I got Jesus. I got a God who can do incredible things, greater things than I could ever imagine, greater things in this church than we could ever imagine, greater things in this world than we could ever imagine. Do you believe that? I believe that. The other two servants, I think the first servant, he doesn't believe in the trust that his master places in him. But the other two servants do. They see the trust that their master has placed in them, and they believe it. And he says that you have been faithful in little. This is in verse 21. You have been faithful in little. It's interesting because the master says this when he comes back, when he sees that they have doubled their money. You've been faithful in little. But yet faith is believing in what we can't see, correct? So are they faithful in the fact that they doubled their money? Or are they faithful because they believed in the trust their master placed in them before they ever saw the result? Are they faithful because they doubled their money? Or are they faithful because they believed the trust their master placed in them before they ever saw a result? See, some of us are waiting for the result. We're waiting for the result. And then once we see the result, then we'll know we did the right thing. But what God is asking us to do is not wait for the result, but to believe today that he has placed everything that you need to have in you to do what he's called you to do someday. That's what he's called you to do. He's not asking you to get the result. I firmly believe that if he had come back and they hadn't doubled their money, but they had tried, he would have still called them faithful. But God is not a God who takes a faithful person's work and leaves it reaping nothing. That's the difference. Is we're afraid that if I step out and try, I'm going to fail. But what if God is a faithful God who, though he might let you fail, will bring better things out of it? What if God is a faithful God that doesn't care if you fail in the moment because he has the power to do greater things than you can do through your failure? That's the thing about partnering with Jesus. This is why God has called us to a partnership. There's no excuse to say, you know what, I don't know if I can. Because Jesus has explicitly stated, I've placed it in you, I've entrusted you with it, and I believe that you can do something with it. Do you believe that you have been equipped? Do you believe that you have everything you need to step out and start? God is not saying everything you need is literally right here, right now. No, sometimes God is just saying you have the ability to start, and I will provide for you on the journey. But we're afraid to start because our fear of failure is bigger than our picture of Jesus. The master left. What he could have done, and he even says this later. He says, to the one servant who only had the one talent, he says, if you truly believed that I was a hard man, you would have put my money in the bank and I could have at least gained interest. Let me tell you what the safe thing for God to do would be. To do it all himself. To put it in the bank and get his interest. But guess what he didn't do? He didn't do that. He put the money in your hands. He put the gifts in your hands. He put the talents in your hands. He put the resources in your hands. And because he did that, he trusts you with it. He called you not to watch. He called you to partner with. Sometimes I think we watch. Sometimes I think I watch. Hey, that was a cool story about that church that grew over there. That was a cool story about that miracle that happened over there. That was a cool story about how those people showed up for that person in need over there. Cool. Those people partnered with Jesus. He's calling you and me to partner with him. To partner with him. What that means, let me just be practical real quick. What that means for us as a church is that every single one of us in this room is called to partner. Not every single one of us in this room is going to serve specifically in specific roles at church. And that's okay. Church is not the only place that we can partner with Jesus. In fact, it should be the start, and that's all. Sometimes I think we partner with Jesus and then it just becomes a circular thing where we're just here. Partnering with Jesus means this, that every single day I'm asking God, what can I do? What have you given me today? What are you calling me to? What are you calling me to? If you're calling me out, then I'm going to step out. I'm going to try, and I may fail, but I believe that you will not let my failure come to nothing. That's practical partnership. Stepping out is a call. It's not an idea, it's a call. So here's what I want to say to us as a church as we end. If you today are feeling that call from Jesus to partner with him, let's talk. My job is not to do it all. My job is to empower. The next job, your job, is after God has enabled you, is not to do it all yourself, but to then empower other people. That's the job, that's the work that we get to be in. Not just serving by ourselves, but serving with people, serving in a partnership of Jesus Christ. Do we believe that? Let's talk. Seriously, let's talk. If you don't feel called right now, I would ask you to do something. Pray. It sounds so simple. Pray. Start praying and ask God specifically. God, I don't feel equipped. I don't feel ready. I don't feel the call. I don't feel anything. But I believe that you have called me. And I believe that I have been called to partnership. So what are you going to move me to? And it may take days. It may take weeks. It may take months. And it may take years. And that's okay. God is not a God of the immediate. Sometimes he's getting you ready for the thing he's called you to. And that's okay. But start praying today. Don't wait. And don't feel guilty if you're not doing anything. I hope I haven't made anyone feel guilty. But the thing about this, and what I find really interesting, is what I'm going to close with. The guy with the one talent, I'm like, God, why do you pick on that guy? Because he only had one talent. But having less ability is not an excuse to do nothing. In fact, there's a verse in the Bible that says it very clearly. In our weakness, his strength is made known. So I don't know what you feel like. I don't know if you feel like I don't have very much ability. But I'm going to tell you this right now. You have the greatest opportunity to see the power of God at work. For those people who have more ability, sometimes it's really easy to get carried away with our ability, right? With my ability. But I can also look at my weakness and believe that it's the power, it's the ability for God to come through in the greatest ways. Let's do it. Let's step out in faith. Let's have conversations that involve partnering with Jesus. Because we're called. Let's pray. Lord, I want to thank you so much that you have already placed in me today everything that I need to start the journey. And God, you trusted me. You've trusted us in this place. God, you have not stepped back and just said, it'd be easier if I did it a different way. No, you love us so much that you would ask us to be part of it so that we can actually be part of your kingdom, not just looking at it. And God, I just ask that you would bring to our minds your calling. That you would bring to our minds things that you want us to do, things that you know that we'd be good at, and things that you know that we would find even happiness and joy in because we're serving you in it. And God, help us to not believe our fear more than we believe in you. In your name, amen.